The contraction ripped through Zora like a blade forged in hellfire, and somewhere below her window, she heard them cheering for another woman. She gripped the cold metal rails of the hospital bed, her knuckles white as bone, her breath coming in ragged gasps that fogged in the sterile air. The Silvercrest Pack Hospital had always been cold, but tonight it felt like a morgue. All harsh fluorescent lights, gray walls, and the sharp scent of antiseptic that couldn't quite mask the smell of her own fear. Another contraction seized her, and Zora bit down on her lip hard enough to taste copper. The nurse standing at the foot of the bed didn't look up from her clipboard, hadn't looked at Zora once since wheeling her into this room 4 hours ago. Everyone knew. The thought circled through Zora's mind like a vulture waiting for carrion. Everyone in the pack had known for weeks what was coming, and no one had told her. No one had warned the pregnant Omega that her mate was planning to replace her. "Push," the nurse said flatly. "You're fully dilated." Through the window, music swelled, a full orchestra, the kind reserved for pack ceremonies. Zora had helped plan that ceremony 6 months ago, back when she'd still believed she would be standing beside Aiden as his Luna, presenting their daughter to the pack. Now, she was alone in a freezing delivery room while her mate celebrated with another woman. "I need," Zora gasped as another wave of pain crashed over her. "I need Aiden. Please. The baby is coming and I need my mate." The nurse's expression flickered, something that might have been pity, quickly smothered. "Alpha Aiden is occupied with the Luna ceremony. Push, now." Luna ceremony. The words landed like silver bullets in Zora's chest. She'd known, on some level, had felt the mate bond between them growing thin and brittle over the past months, had noticed Aiden's increasing absences, his cold indifference when he bothered to come home at all. But she'd told herself it was stress, politics, the pressures of being alpha of a mid-tier pack trying to climb the ranks. She'd been so stupid. The speaker system crackled to life, and Aiden's voice filled the room, warm and confident in a way he hadn't sounded with her in months. "It is my honor and privilege to present to you Silvercrest's new Luna, Ilara Ashworth." The pack erupted in howls of approval. Through the mate bond, Zora felt Aiden's satisfaction, his desire, his complete and utter contentment as he marked another woman's neck. The bond between them writhed and convulsed, poisoned by his betrayal, and Zora screamed. "Push!" the nurse commanded. Zora pushed, not because she wanted to obey, but because her body gave her no choice. The baby was coming whether the world was ending or not, whether her heart was shattering into 1,000 pieces or not, whether her mate was claiming another woman or not. The pain of labor tangled with the agony of the bond until Zora couldn't tell where. One ended, and the other began. She pushed and screamed and pushed again, and through it all the celebration continued below. Champagne corks popping, glasses clinking, her replacement being showered with congratulations. Then, cutting through everything else, came a new sound. A baby's cry, thin and fierce and absolutely perfect. "It's a girl," the nurse said, and for just a moment, her professional mask slipped to reveal something almost human. She placed the tiny, blood-slicked infant on Zora's chest, and the world contracted to that single point of contact. Zora's daughter. Her, Aria. The name came unbidden, as natural as breathing. Aria, because even in the darkest night, new stars were born. Zora cradled her daughter against her heart and felt something fundamental shift inside her. The mate bond with Aiden was dying, poisoned and withered, but something stronger was taking its place. Maternal love, fierce and absolute, wrapped around her like armor. "Hello, little one," Zora whispered, her voice breaking. "I'm your mama. I'm here. I'll always be here." Aria's eyes, unfocused and midnight blue, seemed to search for her. A tiny hand found Zora's finger and gripped with surprising strength. For a moment, one perfect, suspended moment, nothing else mattered. Then the door slammed open. Aiden strode in like he owned the room, which, technically, he did. He was devastating as always, tall and golden-haired, with amber eyes that had once looked at Zora like she was his entire world. Tonight, Those eyes were cold as winter stone. He still wore his ceremonial suit, and Zora could smell Alara's perfume clinging to him like a brand. Aiden. Hope flared in her chest, despite everything. He'd come. He'd come to see their daughter, to hold her, to remember what they'd built together. Maybe. "I'll make this quick," Aiden said, his voice clipped and businesslike. He didn't look at the baby, didn't ask if Zora was all right, didn't even glance at the blood-soaked sheets or the tears streaming down her face. "I, Aiden Ashworth, Alpha of Silvercrest Pack, reject you, Zora Vance, as my mate and Luna. Our bond is severed. You have until sunrise to leave Pack territory." The words hit like silver through her heart. Zora felt the mate bond snap. Not fade, not fray, but shatter with such violence that she screamed again, this time purely from the spiritual agony of rejection. It was like having her soul ripped in half, like being hollowed out and left empty, a shell where a person used to be. Arya started crying, sensing her mother's distress. "Aiden, please!" Zora could barely form words through the pain. "Please don't do this. She's yours. She's your daughter. Just look at her." "I have no daughter." Aiden's face remained impassive, carved from marble. "Alara is my Luna now. Any children she bears will be my heirs." His lip curled slightly. "You were a mistake, Zora, a youthful indiscretion that I've now corrected. Be grateful I'm giving you until sunrise. A lesser alpha would demand you leave immediately." He turned on his heel and walked out, leaving the door swinging open behind him. The nurse had vanished at some point during the exchange. Zora was alone with her newborn daughter, her soul torn open and bleeding, the cold hospital air seeping into her bones. She should cry more, should rage or beg or fight. Instead, she felt a strange, terrible numbness spreading through her limbs like frostbite. Everything she'd believed about her life, her mate, her pack, her future, had been lies. Pretty stories she'd told herself, while the truth rotted underneath. Arya's cries pulled her back from the edge of that void. The baby needed her. Nothing else mattered. Zora adjusted her daughter against her chest, letting the infant root and find her breast. The simple act of nursing grounded her back in her body, back in this moment, back in survival. She had until sunrise. She had a newborn daughter, and no pack, no home, no one. She had been thrown away like garbage. But she was still breathing. Arya was still breathing. And sometimes, that was enough to start with. The hours before dawn passed in a blur of mechanical motion. Zora forced herself to move, despite the agony of the severed bond, despite the exhaustion of childbirth, despite the hollow ache where her heart used to be. She packed what little she was allowed to keep, some clothes, a few credits, the baby supplies she'd accumulated over the past months. No one came to help. No one even looked at her. The pack she'd called family for 2 years treated her like a ghost, averting their eyes when she passed, conversations dying the moment she entered a room. Aiden had made his choice clear, and pack hierarchy was absolute. To show kindness to a rejected mate was to question the alpha's judgment. Zora had never felt so invisible. As the first gray light of dawn crept over the mountains, she wrapped Arya in every blanket she could carry and began the walk to the pack border. Frost coated the ground, and her breath misted in the frozen air. November in the Northern Territories was brutal, and she had nothing but a worn coat and determination to keep them warm. Arya slept against her chest in a makeshift sling, mercifully quiet. Small blessing. Zora wasn't sure she could handle her daughter's cries on top of everything else. The border markers appeared through the trees, rough-hewn stone pillars carved with the Silvercrest sigil. Beyond them lay neutral territory, no pack laws, no protection, no safety. Freedom, Zora tried to tell herself. Freedom meant possibility. But her legs were trembling, her vision swimming. The bond severing had taken more from her than she'd realized. Rejection syndrome, the old texts called it. When a wolf's body shut down from the trauma of having their mate bond torn away. Most rejected wolves recovered within a few days, given rest and care. Zora had neither. She stumbled, caught herself against a tree. Arya stirred and made a small sound of protest. "Just a little further," Zora whispered, though she wasn't sure she believed it. "We just have to make it past the border, and then—" Her knees buckled. She went down hard, managing to twist at the last moment to protect Arya from the impact. The frozen ground embraced her with cold fingers, seeping through her clothes, inviting her to rest, to sleep, to let go. Just for a moment, she thought. Just close my eyes for a moment. Arya's cry cut through the seductive pull of hypothermia. Zora forced her eyes open, forced her arms to cradle her daughter closer. But she couldn't make her legs work anymore, couldn't make herself stand. She was going to die here, at the border, with her infant daughter, rejected and forgotten. "I'm sorry, Arya," she breathed, darkness creeping into the edges of her vision. "I'm so sorry. I tried to be enough." Voices echoed in the distance, footsteps crunching through frost. Border Patrol, she thought, dimly. They'd make sure she crossed fully out of pack territory before leaving her to her fate. Standard protocol for rejected mates. "Commander, there's someone here. A female with an infant. She's collapsed." More footsteps, heavier, more purposeful. Then a presence swept over her like a tidal wave. Massive, ancient, powerful beyond anything Zora had ever felt. Her wolf, wounded and withdrawn since the rejection, suddenly lifted its head and whimpered. Not in fear, in recognition. Hands touched her shoulders, carefully turning her, and even through her coat, even through her dying numbness, that touch sent electricity racing through her body. Every nerve ending came alive. The hollow ache in her chest didn't disappear, but something else bloomed alongside it. Something golden and warm and absolutely overwhelming. Zora's eyes fluttered open. A face filled her vision, striking and severe. Sharp cheekbones, a strong jaw, ice blue eyes that held centuries of knowledge and power. Dark. Hair fell across his forehead as he leaned over her, and the moment their gazes locked, the world exploded. Golden fire erupted between them, visible even to her failing vision. A mate bond, not like the pale shadow she'd shared with Aiden, but something primal and absolute, slammed into place with the force of destiny itself. It threaded through her chest, wrapped around her shattered heart, and sang with a rightness that defied everything Zora thought she knew about bonds. "Mine," the man growled, his voice reverberating with power. His eyes widened, shock breaking through his regal composure. "You're mine." Zora tried to speak, tried to ask what was happening, who he was, why she felt like she'd finally come home after a lifetime of wandering. But the darkness was pulling her under again. "She's hypothermic," someone said urgently. "And the baby." "Both of them now. My personal physician, my private chambers. Move." The man's voice cracked like thunder, absolute command that brooked no argument. "She is my fated mate. She is under my protection. Anyone who has harmed her will answer to me personally." Zora felt herself being lifted with impossible gentleness, felt Arya secured against her chest, felt warmth beginning to seep back into her frozen limbs. Through the new bond, she sensed the man's fury, not at her, but at whoever had driven her to this point. Rage so vast it could level mountains, but also tenderness, wonder, a joy so profound it brought tears to eyes that hadn't cried in centuries. "Hold on, little wolf," he murmured against her hair. "I've waited 300 years for you. Just hold on." The last thing Zora registered before consciousness fled was his heartbeat against her cheek, steady and strong, and safe. For the first time in longer than she could remember, she felt safe. Consciousness returned in fragments, warmth, softness, the scent of pine and something darker, wilder, earth after rain, winter wind, and something purely male that made her wolf stir for the first time since the rejection. Zora's eyes fluttered open to find herself in an enormous bed, draped in deep blue silk, a fireplace crackling across the room, windows revealing a view of snow-capped mountains she didn't recognize. This wasn't Silvercrest territory. This wasn't anywhere she'd ever been. Memory crashed back, the collapse, the man, the impossible bond that had snapped into place. Her hand flew to her chest, searching for the connection, and found it there, golden and warm and thrumming with life, so different from the toxic thread that had bound her to Aiden. "Arya," she gasped, sitting up too quickly. The room spun, but panic overrode dizziness. "Where's my daughter?" "Safe," a deep voice came from across the room. Zora's head snapped toward the sound, and her breath caught. The man from the border sat in a leather chair near the fireplace, her daughter cradled expertly in his arms. Arya was awake and content, her tiny hand wrapped around his finger while he held a bottle at the perfect angle. The sight struck Zora with such unexpected tenderness that tears sprang to her eyes. He was devastating in the firelight, all sharp angles and restrained power, his ice-blue eyes ancient and knowing. But the way he looked at Arya held such careful gentleness that it made Zora's chest ache. "You've been unconscious for 6 hours," he said, his voice pitched low to avoid startling the baby. "My physician examined you both. Rejection syndrome, hypothermia, and exhaustion. You nearly died." His jaw tightened. "Your daughter is perfectly healthy, though she was hungry." "Who are you?" Zora whispered, though some part of her already knew. She'd heard the guards call him commander, had felt the weight of his power like a physical force. "Nikita Valdris." His ice-blue eyes lifted to meet hers, and the mate bond surged between them. "Alpha King of the Northern Territories." Alpha King. Zora's mind struggled to process the words. The Alpha King, ruler of all packs, the most powerful wolf alive, a figure of legend more than politics. And he was sitting in a chair, feeding her daughter like it was the most natural thing in the world. "The bond," she managed. "I don't understand. I was mated to Aiden. Even after rejection, I shouldn't be able to form another bond for months, maybe years." "Because what you had with him was never a true bond." Nikita's voice held absolute certainty. "A proximity bond, formed through time and physical closeness. Common, weak, easily broken because it was never meant to last." His gaze held hers, intense and searching. "What exists between us is something else entirely. A fated bond, soul to soul, ordained by the moon herself. It cannot be manufactured, cannot be replicated, and cannot be severed." Zora stared at him, trying to reconcile this new reality with everything she thought she knew. "You said you waited 300 years. "I did." Nikita shifted Arya to his shoulder, gently patting her back until she burped. The domestic gesture from the legendary Alpha King was so incongruous that Zora almost laughed. "I was made king at 97 years old. Young, by our standards. I killed the previous king when he descended into madness and began slaughtering packs for sport." His expression darkened at the memory. "The crown came with duties I'd never imagined. For 2 centuries, I did nothing but build, govern, and wait. Every year, I searched for my fated mate, attended ceremonies, met thousands of females, hoped each time that the bond would snap into place." He paused. "It never did. I began to believe it never would." "And then you found me, dying in the snow," Zora said softly. "And then I touched you, and everything I'd been missing for 3 lifetimes suddenly existed." Nikita stood, moving toward the bed with Arya still in his arms. Up close, he was even more overwhelming. Tall enough that she had to crane her neck, radiating power that made her, the wolf, want to both submit and challenge him simultaneously. "You are not weak, Zora. You are not worthless. You are the answer to centuries of emptiness." He held her gaze, the mate bond pulsing between them like a living thing. "I understand if you need time," he continued. "You've been through trauma I can barely imagine. I won't push you, won't rush you, won't demand anything you're not ready to give. But I want you to know what you are to me." His free hand reached out to cup her cheek, his touch sending sparks racing through her veins. You are mine, Zora. Not by force, not by command, but by fate. And I am yours, if you'll have me. Zora felt tears slip down her cheeks, not of sorrow this time, but something more complicated. Hope, maybe, or the first fragile stirrings of belief. I don't know how to be what you need, she whispered. I'm broken, rejected. I have nothing to offer a king. Nikita's thumb brushed away her tears with heartbreaking gentleness. You are not broken. You are wounded. And there is a difference. Wounds heal. His gaze dropped to Arya, now sleeping peacefully against his chest. And as for what you offer, you are my mate, my equal, my home. That is everything. Something cracked in Zora's chest. Something that had felt dead since Aiden's rejection flickered back to life. Not trust. Not yet. But possibility. The days that followed unfolded like a dream Zora was afraid to believe in. Her suite in the Alpha King's palace was larger than the entire home she'd shared with Aiden. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking gardens that held stark beauty even in winter. Furniture in rich woods and soft fabrics. Every comfort she could imagine. A nursery had been connected to her bedroom overnight, filled with everything Arya could possibly need. Nikita came every morning. He didn't demand her company, didn't pressure her to complete the bond, didn't act as though he had any claim on her beyond what she chose to give. He simply arrived with breakfast, helped care for Arya, and talked with her about his kingdom, his life, his centuries of loneliness. He asked about her past too, listening without judgment when she haltingly described her years with Aiden, the slow erosion of his affection, the public humiliation of her rejection. Each time she shared something painful, his jaw would tighten and his eyes would flash gold with barely suppressed rage. But he never directed that anger at her, only at the male who had hurt her. I want to kill him, Nikita admitted one evening, watching Zora nurse Arya by the fire. His voice was casual, as though discussing the weather. I want to tear out his throat and mount his head on a pike outside my walls, as a warning to anyone who would dare harm what's mine. Zora should have been disturbed by the violence in his words. Instead, she felt something warm unfurl in her chest. That might cause diplomatic problems. I'm the Alpha King. I am diplomacy. But his lips quirked in what might have been a smile. I'll restrain myself. For now. On the 5th day, he asked permission to formally adopt Arya. They were in Zora's sitting room, Arya asleep in Nikita's arms. He held her every chance he got, as though making up for every moment she'd been without a father's protection. The request came without preamble, his ice blue eyes serious and intent. I want to claim her as my daughter, give her my name, my protection, make her a princess of the realm. He paused. I know I'm not her biological father. I know this might be too fast, but I look at her, and all I see is mine. Zora's throat closed with emotion. Why? She's not your blood. You barely know her. She is yours. That makes her mine. Nikita's voice held absolute conviction. Her biological father threw her away like she was nothing. I want to spend the rest of her life proving how wrong he was. I want her to grow up knowing she is loved, protected, valued beyond measure. His hand cupped Arya's head with heartbreaking tenderness. I want to be your father, Zora, if you'll let me. The word escaped before Zora could stop it. Yes. Nikita's smile transformed his severe face into something almost boyish. He reached into his jacket and produced a document. Formal adoption papers, the royal seal already affixed. You already had them prepared, Zora realized. I had them prepared the first night. I've been carrying them with me ever since, waiting for the right moment. He offered her a pen. I didn't want to pressure you, but I also didn't want to wait a single moment longer than necessary once you agreed. Zora signed, Nikita signed, and just like that, Arya became Princess Arya Valdris, heir to the Northern Territories, daughter of the Alpha King. When Nikita looked up from the document, his eyes glistened with something Zora had never expected to see on the face of a legendary warrior king. Thank you, he said roughly. Thank you for letting me have this. It was in that moment, watching the most powerful wolf alive cry over the gift of fatherhood, that Zora felt her walls begin to crumble. Maybe, she thought, maybe this could be real. The attack came on a crystalline winter morning. They were walking in the palace gardens, Arya bundled warmly against Zora's chest, Nikita at her side. The bond between them had grown stronger over the past week, golden threads deepening into something that felt increasingly permanent. Zora had begun to lean into it, to trust it, to believe that maybe fate had given her something beautiful after taking so much. She was mid-sentence when Nikita suddenly went rigid, his entire body tensing like a predator scenting danger. "Get down," he commanded, already moving to cover her with his body. The arrow whistled through the space where Zora's head had been a heartbeat before. Its silver tip gleamed with something oily. Poison, her mind registered. It embedded itself in a garden statue with a solid thunk. Chaos erupted. More arrows came from multiple directions, a coordinated assault. Palace guards converged, shouting orders, but Nikita was already moving, his body between Zora and every possible angle of attack. His eyes blazed gold, his wolf rising to the surface. "The nursery tower," he commanded, his voice cracking with authority. "Get her there now. Triple guard. No one enters without my direct order." "But you—" "I can survive a poisoned arrow." His hands gripped her shoulders, fierce and desperate. "You cannot. Go." Guards surrounded her, hurrying her toward the palace. Zora looked back and saw Nikita catching an arrow out of midair, crushing it in his fist, his entire form radiating lethal rage. More arrows found their marks, one in his shoulder, another grazing his arm, but he didn't falter. Then she caught a scent on the wind that turned her blood to ice. Aiden. Her ex-mate was here. "Nikita!" she screamed, but the guards were already pulling her inside, through corridors that became increasingly secure, through doors sealed with magical wards. They ended in a fortified chamber deep in the palace's heart, designed for exactly this kind of emergency. Zora clutched Arya to her chest, her body shaking, her mind racing. Why was Aiden here? He'd rejected her. He'd thrown her away. Why would he attack her now, unless— The door opened, and Nikita strode in, his shoulder already bandaged, blood seeping through the gauze. He crossed directly to her, his hands framing her face, his eyes scanning her frantically. "Are you hurt? Did any arrows come close?" "No, I'm fine. But you're wounded." "Already healing." He dismissed his injuries as though they were nothing, his entire focus on her. "Zora, we caught one of the attackers." He confirmed Aiden ordered the assault. "Why?" Zora shook her head, unable to process it. "He rejected me. He has Alara. Why would he—" "Because you're not just my mate, Zora." Nikita's expression was grave. "You're the fulfillment of an ancient prophecy." "What?" "Your bloodline, your mother's bloodline, carries Silver Wolf heritage. It's been dormant for generations, but when our bond completes, it will awaken." His hands tightened on her face. Silver wolves are healers of corruption, uniters of packs, queens who bring peace to chaos. Damian Volkov, the vampire who rules the Shadow Territories, has been searching for silver wolves for centuries, to control them or destroy them. He's allied with Aiden. They want to either capture you before your awakening or kill you to prevent it. Zora stared at him, the words refusing to make sense. "I'm just an Omega. I don't have any powers." "You do. You just haven't awakened them yet." Nikita's thumb brushed across her cheekbone. "Your mother had them too. That's why she was killed when you were young. The pack that raised you didn't know your heritage, or they would have protected you better." His jaw clenched. "Aiden knew. That's why he mated you in the first place. He'd heard rumors of your bloodline and wanted to control it. When Alara's father offered a better political alliance, he chose power over prophecy, never realizing what he was truly discarding. The implications crashed over Zora like a wave. Not just rejected, targeted from the beginning. Not just discarded, thrown away because Aiden didn't understand her true value. "I can't be what you're describing." Her voice broke. "I can't be some legendary queen. I'm not strong enough." "You walked through snow for hours with a newborn to protect her." Nikita's voice was fierce. You survived a rejection that would have killed most wolves. You chose to keep living when everything in you wanted to die. He pressed his forehead to hers. You are exactly strong enough, Zora. You just don't know it yet. Arya stirred in her arms, making a soft sound. The baby's eyes opened, and Zora gasped. They had changed. Still blue, but now shot through with silver. Her daughter's heritage awakening in response to the bond, to the danger, to destiny calling. The bond between us is incomplete, Nikita said quietly. It's protecting you partially, but leaving us both vulnerable to dark magic. Damien and Aiden know this. That's why they're attacking now, before we fully unite. He pulled back enough to look at her. I won't push you. I won't rush you. But I need you to understand the stakes. Zora looked at her daughter, her silver-eyed daughter, her princess, her reason for surviving. Then at Nikita, this ancient king who'd waited centuries for her, who'd claimed her child as his own, who'd shielded her with his body, and would clearly die before letting anyone hurt her. The choice crystallized with sudden clarity. Tonight, she said. We complete the bond tonight. Nikita's eyes widened. Zora, you don't have to. I know. That's why I'm choosing to. She held his gaze, letting him see her determination. I'm done being afraid. Done being passive. Done letting other people decide my fate. Her voice strengthened. I choose you, Nikita. I choose us. I choose to face this together. The smile that transformed his face was beautiful and terrible. A king claiming his queen. A wolf recognizing his mate. A male seeing his entire future fall into place. Together, he agreed. He sealed the promise with a kiss, gentle at first, then deeper as the bond surged between them, golden fire building toward completion. That night, in his private chambers, with guards at every door and Arya safe in her nursery, Nikita completed their bond with a tenderness that shattered every expectation Zora had ever had about the legendary warrior king. He worshipped her body like a prayer, murmured devotions against her skin, and when his fangs finally sank into her neck to place his claiming mark, Zora felt her entire being ignite. Silver light exploded from her skin. The dormant power in her blood awakened with a force that shook the foundations of the palace. She felt herself changing, evolving, becoming something more than she'd ever been. Not weak Omega Zora, not rejected mate Zora, but something ancient and powerful and right. Through their completed bond, she felt Nikita's awe, his pride, his overwhelming love. My queen, he breathed through their connection. My silver wolf. Mine. Yours, she answered. Always yours. When the light faded, Zora opened eyes that now matched her daughter's. Human blue shot through with silver, the mark of her awakened heritage. The mate bond between her and Nikita blazed like a sun, unbreakable, eternal, a force that would endure until the end of time. She was no longer broken, no longer rejected, no longer a mistake to be discarded. She was the Silver Queen, and she had work to do. Damien's fortress fell in 3 days. Nikita led the assault personally, his massive black wolf form tearing through defenses that had stood for centuries. But it was Zora who ended it, her newly awakened powers purifying the dark magic that protected the Vampire Lord, her silver light burning through shadows that had never known illumination. Damien Volkov died screaming, unable to comprehend how his centuries of planning had crumbled before a wolf queen who'd been rejected by a mid-tier alpha barely a month ago. Aiden they found in the dungeons, trying to negotiate his way out. Zora stood before her ex-mate in the ruins of his ally's stronghold, Nikita a massive presence at her side, her silver eyes glowing with power Aiden had never imagined she possessed. He looked pathetic now, disheveled, terrified, stripped of all the arrogance that had allowed him to throw her away. Zora, he stammered. Zora, please, I didn't know. If I had known what you were... You would have what? Kept me? Used me for my power instead of discarding me for politics? Zora's voice was calm, cold, utterly devoid of the love she'd once felt for him. You rejected me while I was giving birth to your daughter. You threw us out to die in the snow. You tried to have me killed when you realized your mistake. I can explain. I don't need your explanations. Zora stepped forward, and Aiden flinched back from her glow. I used to wonder what I did wrong. Used to believe I wasn't good enough, pretty enough, powerful enough to deserve love. You made me feel like nothing." Her voice hardened. "You were wrong. And now you get to spend the rest of your life knowing that the Omega you threw away became a queen. That the daughter you rejected is a princess. That the mate you discarded is more loved, more valued, more cherished than you could ever have made her." She turned away. "Nikita, do what you want with him. He means nothing to me anymore." She walked out without looking back, head high, silver light trailing in her wake. Behind her, she heard Nikita's growl, low and satisfied and utterly lethal. "You heard, my queen. She says you mean nothing." A pause, rich with dark promise. "Unfortunately for you, what you did to her means everything to me." Zora didn't stay to watch. She didn't need to. Some vengeances were better left to kings. The coronation took place on the winter solstice, the longest night of the year, giving way to the return of light. Zora stood in the great hall of Nikita's palace, dressed in silver and white, her daughter in her arms. The gathered wolves of a dozen packs watched as the Alpha King himself placed the crown on her head, not as a ceremony of ownership, but of partnership. Two equals ruling together. "I present to you," Nikita announced, his voice carrying to every corner of the hall, "Queen Zora Valdris, the Silver Queen of the Northern Territories, my fated mate, my partner, my home." The hall erupted in howls of approval. Later, after the ceremony, after the celebration, after Arya had been settled in her nursery with a dozen guards and 2 devoted nursemaids, Zora stood with Nikita on their private balcony, watching the stars wheel overhead. "A month ago I was dying in the snow," she said softly. "Rejected, alone, convinced I wasn't worth anything." Nikita pulled her against his chest, his arms wrapping around her like armor. "And now?" Zora leaned into his warmth, feeling the mate bond pulse between them, golden and eternal, a love she'd never dared to dream of. "Now I'm home." She turned in his arms, rising on her toes to kiss him. The Alpha King met her halfway, his hands tangling in her hair, his devotion pouring through their bond. She had been thrown away in a cold delivery room. She had risen as queen in a palace of gold. And the king knelt only for her.